Hey guys, this is Matt Core from ControlPaint.com. If you take a look at this painting by John Singer Sargent, it is amazingly lively. Even though it's a finished painting, there are obviously exposed brush marks, and it creates sort of a dynamic feel. Now, this effortless quality is really sought after by accomplished painters, but sadly, it's something that's essentially impossible to teach. Instead, it's the result of years and years of painting experience. And Sargent painted with thick paint and extreme confidence. So this series is not going to teach you how to paint with thick paint or give you automatic painting experience. Instead, I'm going to give you a strictly digital approach to achieve dynamic brush marks. So if we were to think about this in terms of color, you might remember the Grayscale to Color series in which I talk about the difference between direct painting and indirect painting. So direct painting required you to pick the exact right color and lay down a single, confident, thick brush stroke. Now, on the other hand, indirect painting allowed you to build up layer upon layer of glazes, and in doing so, you'd work towards that perfect color, but you'd get there slowly. So direct painting might be the eventual goal, but indirect glazing was a great way to build up your painting skills in a repeatable process. So this series is going to take the same idea, but instead of with color, the goal is going to be lively mark making. So if you look at the work of these contemporary digital painters like Jones, Mullins, and Safadi, you can see a great balance between controlled edges and lively marks. This is our goal. So unlike looking at a Sargent painting though, it's really impossible to know what sorts of tools are being used to achieve digital results like these. Because really, digital painting doesn't always follow the rules of traditional painting. Now, eventually you might be able to take a direct painting approach and make each of those strokes perfectly the first time, but that's impossible to teach. So we're going to take an indirect, uniquely Photoshop method for creating a similar look, but it's going to be a bit more repeatable, and it's something that I can teach to you. So really, at the core of the matter, it's this balance between nice natural media brushes, which are kind of cool and make neat marks, but ultimately are just a challenge to control. And also the easy to control, but sort of boring qualities of hard, flat, and round brushes. So what we're going to be doing is combining those two principles in a two-step process. So the step one is to make shape. And shape is usually made with flat or round brushes. So I can make whatever the silhouette of this particular brush mark is going to look like with the eraser and with the brush. It's on its own layer, and this is the key. And then once I have the shape figured out, I can lock that, switch to a brush that is much harder to control, and then do my rendering. So here I get the qualities of both. It is nice and painterly, as you can see here. That looks like a nice hand-painted look. But the edge is very controlled. So it's a little bit abstract when compared to the way an oil painter might work, but it really takes the best of both worlds. And then once you're done with that, you have a layer that you can move around on its own, and one that you could duplicate. So that's it. It is a really simple procedure, and that's why it's easy to teach. But it really gives an interesting balance between rough and controlled. So let's see how this works in some real paintings. So first I'll show you what we are not going to do. So if I wanted to add a cone to this image, I might start painting with big, active, natural media looking strokes. Now here I'm using the brushes from the series, so you might recognize these. But pretty quickly it starts getting messy. As I start to refine the shape and blend here, I'm getting really messy edges. And then when I go back to start fixing those edges, I start messing up the background. So then if I were to try and fix the background, I might mess up my object again. And it can go in this feedback loop of sort of chasing your own tail, where you're fixing problems and then creating more problems, and it just gets messy. Well, we want to avoid all of that. So I propose instead sort of a two-step process. The first step is making shape. So here, if I wanted to add a cone in a totally different technique, I'd start with a total placeholder color. It's not going to look like this in the end. I just want to get the silhouette in place. So for this, I'll use a brush that I have good edge control with. And then once I have the shape in place, I go to the second phase, which is the color and texture, all the fun painterly stuff. So I can lock the way this shape looks, not have to worry about the edges, and then paint with those big messy brushes. So what I get here is a balance between those two factors. I get a clean edge, and I get active brush marks inside the form. And when you look at the final result, it just looks painterly. Like the ball on the left here, you might not know how I created it, but what you do know is that it has nice visible brush marks, but somehow also has a very clean edge. And that is a nice balance. That's going to be sort of the balance we try and achieve through this entire series. All right, in the following videos, I'm going to go into detail on how this simple process can be applied to actual illustrations. Additionally, I'm going to talk about the technical side of things, the keyboard shortcuts and the workflow. And finally, I'm going to give you a guided tour of the included brush pack. If you haven't already seen it, there's a 9 brush pack included right in this zip file. So if you want to follow along with the exact brushes that I'm using, go for it.